Jenny is already, and we just started. So that'll give you kind of a tip as to what's to come. I want to thank Mario Alberto for being on the show yesterday. He was amazing. I had so many people who said you got to bring Mario back, and that was his second time. Mario, as soon as he got off, booked for February 16th. He loves the platform. He loves the people. And the love just continued to show. And afterwards, he told me a couple other stories that when you hear these, I mean, you'll really feel something. With that said, the chat's open. Chat is so vital for interaction. Please introduce yourself. If you got a question, please share it. Whatever it is that can allow you to feel better after you leave the show. Right? So make some connections, share who you are, whatever it takes. Everybody should come out of here with a win. With that said, Jenny, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Kind of share, you've been here from the very beginning and the progression of what we're doing and really your aha moment and what really changed your life. And here we got Munica. Munica's almost every day. Hi, Donald and Jenny. It's so great to see you, Munica. Cynthia's here, another core member who keeps supporting and really spreading, joy. And me and Jenny had talked about that. Mm-hmm. So, Jenny, your turn.
My turn. Okay, so hi, everybody. Don, I'm so glad to be back on. It's been too long. 3 weeks is too long, I have decided. So I'm glad that we're going to be doing this every other week from now on because it's all about me. No, it's not, but you know what I mean. I'm glad that we've reconnected. And I'm a personal development coach. That's what I do. I help people rediscover what they want to be experiencing in their life, reconnecting them with what brings them joy and helping them move from where they are right now to where they want to get to through habit change and small steps, which sounds like small steps because everybody wants to get there right away. But there is so much joy in taking time to rediscover who you are and what you want, because we can spend so long catering to everybody else's needs. And that's what I did for so long. I think I was stuck in a rut for years and years and years. Like we moved in 2011 from Ireland. I left everybody at home, all my friends, my family, and my career as a voiceover artist. And I spent about 9 years here, Don, telling myself this little story that there was nothing here for me. Which is, it just, every time I think about that now, it makes me kind of chuckle. Like, said no one ever about this country. There's nothing here for me, There's opportunity wherever you go if you choose it. And I just played that blame game for such a long time. Well, I have to stay here because this is where Dave works. And I have to stay here because now my kids are in school. And I would distract myself with helping everybody else, doing stuff for everybody else, whether they asked me or not. And that distraction gave me a reason why I couldn't actually make a change for myself. Look within and figure out what's the obstacle, because the chances were, of course, it was going to be me. Well, I'm the obstacle. I'm choosing to stay in this rut. I'm choosing to have this same routine, this hamster wheel of life every day. And what shifted for me was a very good friend of mine. She just asked me one day, she's like, you know what, Jen, would you be willing to help out in our non-for-profit? She said, it might just kind of get you out of this routine, the same stuff every day, and spark some curiosity about something new. So I did. I agreed to it. It was once a week. I would go into Fox Valley Food for Health in St. Charles, and I started, washing vegetables and getting food prepared for the next day when it would be cooked by the chef and that team. And then the delivery angels on Wednesday would deliver to people who were recovering from an illness or they were terminally ill. And it was really for the individual, the patient, but also the caregiver and their family. And what I noticed was, there's a whole other world outside of what I'm experiencing, and I can actually help another person and lift another person up just by showing up and giving my time. So pretty quickly, I decided the delivery angel option was for me because I love people. And hearing people's story and hearing their struggle. And it reignited something in me. And I started to look for other places that I could help. And I was introduced to, so this is what really changed everything for me, was I was introduced and brought on a tour around Kane County Juvenile Justice Centre. And I just couldn't believe the setup in there. You know, everything that the staff were doing, what the superintendent had put in place for these kids that were coming from systemic poverty. They just did not have the same opportunities that other kids on the other side of that building had, like my kids. And I became really interested in ways in which non-for-profits outside of this organization could come in and support. And it felt very different, Don, because it wasn't me telling anybody what to do. I was the bridge between what was going on in the building and what potentially could change for them on the outside. And it was through that work that I developed this little mini exercise called a map to your future. And I just drew it. I didn't even know, I wasn't coaching or anything. It was just something that I had a bout of inspiration one day, and I asked the program manager, is this something we could do? If we could ask the kids if they could do anything, what would it be? Because they're not asked anything. You know, how they thrive in there is routine. You know, they get 3 meals a day. They have to get up at a certain time. They have to go to school. They have to exercise, but there's no choice in there for them. That system is set up to get them into a routine, but they don't have any say in it. They don't get to choose their subjects, for example. Most kids don't really get a choice in a lot of what they do. So what if we approached it a different way and we asked, if you could do anything, what would it be? And the kids were invited. They had 3 choices right away. They could say, no, I don't want to do it. Yes, I want to do it, but I don't want to share it. Or, yes, I want to do it and I'll share it with my youth counselor or my probation officer. So they had a say right away. And what was mind-blowing was just this simple exercise. They would write their name in the top left-hand side and whatever they wanted to do in the bottom right-hand side. And they would draw a map to that goal, that activity. I want to be this one particular kid. Straight away said, I want to be an auto mechanic. We were like, that's so cool. But the invitation was to draw in the obstacles that she thought were all of the reasons why she couldn't do this. And she drew them all in because it was on her terms. And from those obstacles, we were able to connect her with opportunities to get over them and get around them. Did you know that there's a non-for-profit over here that will support you with X? Did you know there's a system in place already for you to support you getting over this obstacle? And suddenly the possibilities became real. I could actually do this. I didn't know that I could, this is actually something that I could do for myself. And the beautiful part of that, Don, is this is true for all of us, not just the kids in the center. These are the stories that we tell ourselves. We have a great idea and then we focus on the how part. And when we focus on the how part, we stack all of those obstacles on top of one another. And then we give ourselves a perfect excuse. Well, you see, that's too challenging. I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm just going to stay exactly where I am. And it was in that moment when we realized there was a group of us around the table. And we realized that like, this is a big shift for these kids. And for anybody, when you think you have it, when you realize that you do have a choice in anything that we do, then there's opportunity for growth. And that sounded like something new for me. I'm like, if this was a job, I would love this job. I would love to get behind somebody else and through asking questions and giving them space to share, help a person move out of whatever rut or stuckness that they're experiencing and start taking steps towards something different and something that they want. So that was really my aha moment, was that I actually have the power to create something new for myself here. The benefit of that is that by getting out of my own way, there's no limit to how many people I can help in the world to do the same thing. So that was the juicy part for me.
Well, it's so heartwarming and compelling and moving because it's real, it's genuine, it's transparent. And really, what you're trying to do with people who need what you have, it really comes down in most cases to delivery, right? Knowing how to get it to someone, how they don't know it's there and you do. So facilitating it, being the interface, and to take that to here with LinkedIn Live, it's created a platform where people can connect real time, real conversation, real feelings with other people just like themselves and have a ripple effect that at its core continues to expand. And what I'm seeing is someone is bringing a friend, right? If you had something that was the greatest place in the world or person in the world, who would you want to bring to it, right? It's probably your best friend or your family member, right, to experience it. And what's happening, a friend is finding a friend to find more friends. And it's growing so organically because of the intent of each person to share something of value with another person, right? A way to spend an hour expressing yourself. Because what I'm finding, and I was mentioning to Jenny, I try to talk to everybody who's even in the audience for like an hour, just to get as much feedback to know what's going on. And the thing that's been universal, a thread, is the depression and anxiety that people are dealing with at different levels. And some people are dealing with it better than others. But I think the reason is they've got nothing to take it to, right? It keeps building up and it keeps building on itself.
Well,
right? Go ahead, Jen.
I would love to jump in. First of all, I want to answer Munica's question, but I'll come back to that in a moment. The thing about depression is it's like anything else, right? You notice if you are a person that is experiencing anxiety or depression or ADHD, like whatever you're experiencing, notice how you frame it in your own mind. I have anxiety. I have depression. I have ADHD. And then invite yourself to consider, am I becoming my diagnosis? Right? I am a person who lives with X. Then it is an opportunity for you to pull out the tools in the toolbox. All right, well, this is something that I live with. Now, what am I going to do about it? What tools have I learned to use to help me shift myself out of this mood? However, this state that I'm being in, am I leaning in on this diagnosis and am I using it as a reason to stay stuck? Well, I can't do that because I have anxiety. Okay, you are a person who lives with anxiety. Let's not become the diagnosis and lean on that and use it as an excuse and a reason not to take a step forward towards something that might change your life, or take a step forward towards joy. Now, Munica asked about self-sabotage a moment ago. In the moment that I think her question was, if you scroll back a little bit, I think it was about what did I do? What changed?
Okay, yeah.
I just want to get it right before I answer.
Okay, right here.
In the moment that you realized that you were self-sabotaging, what happened? What made you change? So, you know what? When we are we're the common denominators in all of our problems, right? That's fact. And it might sound like that's very harsh, but it is true. So when I started coaching, I became my first client. And that was uncomfortable to realize, oh, it's me. Like I'm totally playing the blame game. I'm using all of this outside of me to give myself a reason not to make any changes. And I've done it for most of my life, actually. So what would I like instead? Because when you recognize that it's you, that you're self-sabotaging and you're totally getting in your way, there's a beautiful part of that. And that is that you then have the power to change it. You can ask yourself, if this is what I'm experiencing, what would I like instead? What would I like instead? If I'm experiencing feeling depressed today, what would I like instead? If I'm feeling stressed out, what would I like instead? And when you ask yourself that question, especially when it comes to stress, because so many people have a lot of expectation in January, particularly, they set goals. This year is going to be different. I'm going to set a bunch of goals. I don't have any action steps to get there. And then you're not actually creating new habits to help you move towards those goals. So you're actually having the same routine, same emotion, same result than you had in the past. And then you beat up on yourself and you're full of guilt and shame that nothing's changed and here I am, right? So if that's what you're experiencing, this stress, this anxiety, this defeatedness, this guilt, whatever the case may be, ask yourself, what would I like to be experiencing instead? What is the opposite of stress for me? Well, the opposite is peace. And then invite yourself to consider how can I get to that place? What is one small shift I can create today? What's one thing I could do differently today to move me away from this stressed out state and into something peaceful and calm? It's different for everybody and there's no wrong answer. You're unique. You know yourself so well. You know, your body is a lab and it's free. Test it out on yourself. What can I do differently today? I could get out for a walk. I could listen to some music. I could do some meditation. I could draw. I could tend to my indoor plants. I could clear some clutter. I could call a friend. It could be anything. Whatever is true for you will be the right thing. But it's that decision. You can choose to self-sabotage and stay where you are and be unhappy. Or you can ask yourself, what would I like instead? And for me, Monica, I was so ready for something new. I was so ready to, I actually described it like a harness. I felt like this weight felt like a harness that I had put on myself to keep myself exactly where I was. And little by little, week by week, through doing the work and really looking inwards, I started thinking in terms of like, what if I had big scissors? This is going to sound very dramatic, but this really helped me. And every time I took a step towards something new, it was another slice. It was another slice through this harness until eventually I could shake it off and be me. And really start being intentional about what is going to bring me joy today. What can I do? Now, we don't graduate from being a human being. That's the other thing. Let's give ourselves a moment to consider this too. Not every day is perfect because I'm not Mary Poppins. Some days, I haven't slept well and I might snap at my kids or I might, eat something that doesn't feel good or whatever. But it's noticing, there it is. I showed up again this way, which is not what I wanted. What was missing? I didn't sleep well last night, or I engaged in conversation with someone who's a bit of a drag. They drain me, or I chose to spend too much time on social media, or I spent too much time watching the news and it got me down. Whatever the case may be, you can bridge the gap then. You can decide, I know exactly what was missing that day. So now I'm going to put something in its place. The next time this shows up, I'm going to have a go-to option so that I can reconnect with something joyful. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's perfect sense. I could listen forever because you continue to build, and that illustration is so valid with the scissors and the harness, because people, they say you should communicate on LinkedIn as if you're talking to a 10-year-old, because then everybody will understand what you're saying. And what I found is that I'm always into trends, progressions, and you got to ask yourself, fast forward in 30 days or 60 days, where am I going to be acting the way I am? Right? And it'll probably be exactly where you are or worse, because, adversity is something that either you overcome it overcomes you. There's no sitting on top of the fence. And to me, if it's going to be, it's up to me, that, remember, going back to your family. And the lovely thing about connecting with wonderful people, really wonderful people like Jenny and everybody else who comes on the show, is it brings back memories, really good memories that make you, just feel the love again. When you go to a dinner that your family's making, and on the way you can almost taste it, people say. You can close your eyes and you can see it, and who's around the table, all your favorite stuff, and the joy, and we talked about that earlier. And I think I always find is, okay, there's a neutral gear and a reverse gear in everybody, right? And sometimes you just got to idle for a while to kind of catch yourself. And sometimes you got to back out, right? You got to just leave and go to a better place with hopefully more support. And I think to Jenny's point with helping young individuals who don't know where to get the help, how to get the help, and we talked about this week, if you're 80, all you need to do is find 20. And if someone's 20, all they got to do is find 80. And now two people complete themselves together. And it wasn't about who gave most, who did, who didn't. If you can leave judgment behind.
And ego.
Yeah. And I always find, and whatever it is, if it works, it's good. Right. So if it can get you out of a bad situation, if it can make you feel better when you're worse, I always believe everything is done for a better reason ahead that you don't know yet. Right. I do believe it. I mean, and if you believe it, everything that happens, it's like, okay, this wasn't meant to be, because it would have taken the place of what is about to happen. And if your journey inside your vehicle, instead of always chasing it, not being the tail that wags the dog, that's so important. So the simple things that people do is so important. Andrea's here. Let me just recognize everybody. Andrea actually is going to be our host on, let me make sure, on Friday. Kelly's tomorrow. And Andrea, I can't, you can't have enough superlatives for people's stories. But Andrea, has an amazing story everybody should hear. And she's wrote a book about heal yourself. And it's so inspirational. And she, like I say, it's a story you don't want to miss. If you can't see it live, catch it later on. Munica says, again to that, allowing them to have a voice and share that is what kids need, not just the systematic 3 meals and a cart. That's great. Christy is when we realize that those stories in our head are just make-believe, as we are creating them on something that we are fearful about. So right. And Andrea says exactly which identity you choose. Yeah, I mean, it's a costume. You wake up every day and you decide how to dress up or dress down, right? How to move forward or stay put. So everything is a decision that can change immediately once you make it.
Right. So I would love to just tap into that for a minute, though, because both of those ladies just have mentioned belief and identity in some way, right? I think Andrea mentioned the fear of it. Mm-hmm. So those stories develop when we are really young, between the ages of 2 and 5, right? Sometimes before that. And we're impacted by the people around us. And every kid, every little person wants to create the feeling of love, safety, and belonging, which is every human's basic needs, right? So when we come back to, you think back, like these kids, whether they're in the juvenile center or not, most kids don't have a whole say in what they do, right? A lot of parents don't even accept when a child says, I'm full. At least I wasn't allowed to accept that, my parents didn't accept that. No, you have to eat your dinner. So we're kind of teaching kids from a very young age to go against their gut wisdom, their gut instinct. No, you've got to finish what's on your plate. No, you're going to be looking for snacks later. Well, what if actually that child really has a really good sense of themselves and they are full, but they have to go against their gut instinct? Now, this is just food related, but this is, like, have a think about where else you might be doing this with little children, right? Don't jump. You might fall. Don't run. You might fall. Be nice, behave, be a certain way. be a certain way, this expectation with a very good intention that you want your kids to be well fed and well educated and, you know, have manners and all that stuff. But from the child's perspective, they're kind of going against, a lot of times, who they truly are so that they can feel safe and belonging in the family unit. And if they think that something is not quite right, they start telling themselves little stories. And from those stories form behaviors, form habits. And more often than not, those habits are what start the cycle of how you get in your own way until such point where, you know, you're in your life and you've had enough and you recognize, okay, these behaviors are no longer serving me. But through coaching, what we experience is like when we can take a little look back at when these behaviors may have started, whether it was fear, you know, or overthinking or second guessing or whatever the case may be, it's usually at a very young age. You can tap into that. You recognize, oh, well, these habits are no longer serving me. What would I like instead? How might I update them so my grown-up self gets to get out of my own way and start taking action and start moving towards something that I truly want? But that belief and identity is so important. It's so important to recognize that it's not always as simple as just saying, well, you just have to overcome your fear. You know, you just have to let go of fear. Well, I don't know what's driving that fear, but it could be something from your past that needs a little healing and an opportunity for you to shift your thinking and start putting in place a new plan by cultivating new habits that will actually serve you and help you reach your goals even faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is so important, and most people don't take the time to respond. They overreact. You know, instead of coming back with something that's supportive, it's usually coming back with, you know, a guilt trip, you know, or something like that. And what I saw a study that by the time a child's 5, they've heard 20,000 no's and 5,000 yeses. Right?
I'd well believe it. Yeah.
Because don't touch the stove, don't do this, don't do that, right? But you can turn a no into a yes by, thank you so much, Johnny, for not touching the stove, right? It's the same message as don't touch the stove, but now that person gets credit for not doing something wrong. And here's the rub, is it doesn't stop at 5-year-olds. At 10-year-olds, you're hearing more no's than yeses. At 20, at 40, at 90. And so to turn it around is to turn the reflection from other people to you around, or you be the one who creates it. You know, it's almost like if most people would do the opposite, they'd get the opposite. You know? I mean, and all you got to do is, what am I doing? What is the opposite? And let's do it for a day to have fun. And I love what Jenny's saying is that you need support. You need people who are yes people for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons, not for the people who are trying to, you know, get something from you or have this false facade, wink, wink, nod, nod stuff. And, you know, Paul's been a great guy. He was actually a guest host on Saturday. I'm trying to get as many people on the air because, you know, everybody who plays should have their day in the sun. Everybody's got a voice. Okay, stand corrected. Sarah wrote the book, and she was on 2 Sundays now. She's coming back this Sunday. You know, people love the idea of amplifying their message to people who really want to and need to hear it, and also returning that in turn. Andrea says, I love what you're saying. Listen to your kids, especially when it comes to food. They have the inner voice. They still listen to you, and you can stop out accepting what they do not like to eat. You may think is healthy, but the reaction, well, you know, I'm fortunate is I'm really spending a ton of time. I've got a 10-year-old grandson and a 12-year-old granddaughter. Today's basketball. You know, I just love being part of all those activities. You know, one thing as a businessman, I never missed anything. until they were in junior high, I took them to school every day or walked them to school, and was home for birthdays, whatever it was. And then we traveled all together, which was even super. And you get to know kids as friends. And I know people are afraid to say, well, you can't be a friend when you're a parent. And I said, they're going to get older and I won't be able to tell them things I did as a parent, but I can work with them as a friend, and it just continues to blossom. So, a lot of things are long-term. They're not hard, but they're commitments you have to do, consistently, to be respected. What's your thoughts on that, Jenny?
I agree. I do think there is a fine line between being a friend with your child as they're developing. I think people struggle with this. Like, I'm thinking about a couple of my existing friends who want to be friends with their children. And so they kind of enable behaviors that will not serve them in the real world. So, yeah, I think you can have a very loving and friendly relationship with your kids, but there also has to be a boundary. And kids thrive on how the world works. This is what they need to know this. They need to know that it's not real life that you'll always win at everything. It's not real life that you're always going to get your way. It's not real life that you'll always get along with everybody or that everybody will like you. And I hear it all the time, especially around where I live. There's a lot of parents that with really good intentions that are telling their kids, well, you're the best on the team. Well, maybe they're not the best on the team, or maybe they're the best on this team, but the child is in third grade, right? They're planting this seed that they are the best, that they are the best, that they are the best. And then suddenly the kid moves to a different team and it's harder. And the kid is thinking, well, I don't know what to do with this. I've never lost at anything and I'm super competitive and now I don't like it anymore, so I don't want to do it. Well, that's kind of, or a child, another classic is if the kid doesn't make the varsity team or the top team in something, or doesn't get a solo in the dance recital, and the parent is then going to battle for their child. Maybe the kid actually doesn't have the capability yet to be in that spot. But by arguing and bashing the person in charge, you're fighting for this spot for your kid and you think it's the right thing to do, but you're not really setting them up for success in real life, because they're not going to get every job that they want. They may not get into every college that they want. They may not get a college course that they want to do. The chances are they might get somewhere and realize, oh, I'm not actually that good at this. I just thought I was because my parents are like my biggest champion. But in the real world, I'm not where I thought I would be. And then they feel completely defeated. So I do feel like it's our responsibility to set our kids up for success. And yeah, you can have fun and a healthy, friendly relationship with your kids through love and everything else, through activities and birthday parties and traveling and food or whatever the case may be. But it is really our responsibility to show them how the world works so that they are prepared by the time they're really stepping into it on their own. It's not a surprise. It's no longer a surprise. Oh, you know what? Sometimes I just don't get what I want. How am I going to show up in that moment? Am I going to have a tantrum like I did when I was 5? But I'm 19 now. Is that behavior going to serve me? Probably not.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And, everything you invest early pays dividends later. And, what I did, and now we're talking about raising kids, but raising kids is the same thing as building any trusted relationships, hopefully, is they don't know anything except what you tell them. They're new to the world, right? And what I used to do instead of punishment is I would just say, well, we need to talk about it. And if we didn't come to a thing, well, we're going to talk about it some more. We got some progress, right? And eventually what would usually happen, they got tired of listening or talking and say, okay, I'll do it. Typically
Right.
how it worked. And then when they were at a young age, I cut all the TV channels except for like Animal Planet, the food, just 4 or 5 really worthwhile channels and nothing else for 5 years. And it applied to everybody in the family. and they read more books, played more outside, you know, because as long as it was right for everybody and everybody was making the sacrifice. See, it's you being the example. Your kids tend to duplicate what you demonstrate, right? Because that's almost permission. If you can do it, then hey, it's okay, and I can do it. But it
Well,
goes for
we're leading by example, for better or worse. We're
yeah,
leading by example. If we react, you know, if our kids see us all the time reacting in a negative way to something that doesn't go our way, or if they see us in any behavior, you know, whether it's good or bad, we're modeling that behavior. So if you want to lead by example in the most positive way, be the best version of you that you can be, and your kids will notice. If you're a stressed out person in one area of your life, you're likely a stressed out version in other areas. Like, how do you choose to show up? It's so important because you do get to choose. And I love what you say about, you know, talking with your kids. Like, so my son, and he was using COVID as an excuse when they were home and they couldn't go to school. He wasn't doing his work. And I checked his grades and I noticed that he was just, you know, nothing was going really well. Now, the old version of me would have yelled up the stairs and demanded a team meeting and wanted all the reasons why this wasn't happening. And the new version decided to invite him to consider what might need to change. So he came down the stairs, Don, and he told me a whole load of lies. I did it. I mean, I submitted everything. I don't know what happened. And I said, oh, really? And as he's chatting to me, I'm emailing his teachers. And I'm like, I'm going to connect with your teachers. And suddenly he's like, oh no, I'm going to be caught out on this lie. And she's going to know in a minute. And then he said, it's not really that. It's not really that. It's just that it's so hard because I'm not in school. Now, I did have empathy for this because it was hard. He is a person who loves other people. He thrives on being with his friends, like out in the community, playing sport, like everything he loved had been robbed from him as, you know, a 12-year-old kid. And he was using as an excuse not to show up. And I said, okay, Danny, so what your teachers are saying is that there's clearly a struggle, but guess what? They want to help. Now, will you be happy at the end of the year if these are your grades? Because I'm not a parent who needs straight A's either. I don't require that of my kids because I didn't do that for me, you know, and I'm just not going to put that on them. My expectation is that they do their best. And whether that's in school or it's in sport or as a person, as a human being, be the best version of you that you can be and start by being kind first. So I asked him what do you think he would feel if these were his results at the end of the year? And he said, well, I'm not going to be happy. It's like, okay, so what would you like instead? What is something you can put in place right now? Like, tell me what your plan is. And I invited him to take empowered action. It wasn't easy. Like, every bone in my body wanted to set out a plan and tell him exactly what to do. But by letting it be on his terms, he felt like he actually recognized something in himself. And that was, I have resilience, I have stamina, I've done it before, I can do it again. And he started formulating a little plan in his head. Well, what I'll start with is this. I was like, that sounds great. Like, so what will that bring? What will that do? And he said, well, that will bump my grade up from this to this. And actually I can do it over here as well. And suddenly he had an action plan. And I said, well, what if you could reach out to your teachers where you're really struggling? Your math teacher, and I think it was science at the time, 2 subjects that he doesn't love. And he said, I could do that. And I asked when. He goes, I'm going to do it right now. So within 24 hours, he had calls set up, because these teachers are phenomenal, right? Calls set up with his teachers on his terms, because he had used his voice and he had asked for help. He had reached out to the right person. And suddenly he felt like, I can set myself up for success. He's 12, right? The bonus for me was then I didn't feel the pressure to put in place some action plan that may not have worked for him. And then he could have played the blame game. Well, you told me to do it and it didn't work. I didn't want that. Mm-hmm. So it was really phenomenal. So now he's a freshman in high school, and he actually reached out to his 6th grade teacher. And it was a seventh grade teacher, because it was in the first semester of seventh grade. He reached out to her a couple of weeks ago. I had no idea he was going to do this, but he said, I reached out to this lady and I just thanked her. I thanked her for taking the time with me because math feels so easy now. I was like, really? And he goes, yeah. And I just wanted to show some appreciation because I don't think I would have been able to do it without her help. Now, talk about the ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
This was so unexpected for her. She answered him and she's like, Danny, you've no idea. I had a really rough day today with my students. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. So he was walking around like a peacock. Mm-hmm. So it's just this wonderful, warm, fuzzy feeling that, you know, from a time of sadness and struggle, he really emerged as a very strong and independent young man. And he knows exactly who he is and the power he has to make a change when necessary. So I think we need to give the kids a little more credit.
Oh, yeah. And it's harder and harder than ever before on kids as well as adults. So everybody who's dealing with anxiety and depression are doing it at every age level, at every situation. So when we come together here, we come together for better mental health, physical well-being. And by sharing stories, first of all, people realize they're not alone. If anything, they're the silent majority. And most fear is that people will judge. But, you know, at a certain point, who are these people? What do they do for you? You know, I with my family, like I say, I only rooted for people who rooted for me. So I would go to my daughter's softball game before I go to a Bronco game, you know, and what happens is if you're in the stands for them, they start to get in the stands for you. Everything is reciprocal.
Yes.
You know, and they're proud of you. You know, that's what if you can live for something bigger than yourself, for people you love more than yourself, and you do love them more than yourself because you never bully them like you bully yourself, right? You ask yourself, these thoughts I'm thinking, I would never share with a stranger or a friend. I would never say this or judge them. Why? And you know, and what you realize is you have control. You just need a reason to take control. And either it's internally or externally. Golden books should make this a children. You know, there's life lessons from everybody and everything. And that's why people get elitist and academic and professorial. You know, it turns everybody off. Like, you know everything. And then not only do you know everything for me, and you don't even know me.
Yeah.
And you're going to want me to support this and share this? No. You know, it's givers get. The more you give, the more you get, and you get it in the way you should get it, organically, naturally, because good people recognize other good people, reward people. When you get your, whatever it is, success or wealth, you know, like I've always said, the people who covet money never had any or never had enough. And the other thing is, money makes good people better and bad people worse. Right? So you're a good person and you're doing good and you get money. I asked my wife early on, I said, what would you do if we came into a lot of money? And she said, I give better gifts. You know, it came to her just with that, you know, because she's always making soup, baking bread. She's always got 3 elderly people that she's talking to and visiting. And, you know, it just shows you that's the answer. Right? Somebody else, I gotta have that sports car, or I got it, you know, and it's because they're saying I'm empty without a material thing versus I'm relating to spiritual or giving. And, you know, to your point, you mentioned earlier about your sister and how you helped her so much and helped her to help herself so much. And it's the joy of that really surpasses, I made $1,000 today, you know.
This is what we were talking about earlier. Focus on being helpful. Stop focusing on success. Put your energy and your focus on being helpful, because whether somebody works with you or not, you have the power to lift another human being up if that's what they need. And it creates this, again, I love that expression, the ripple effect, you know. And Danny, to your point, you mentioned a minute ago about how young people are also suffering. It's difficult to be a kid these days. It just is. And my son, Danny, when he was in between 5th and 6th grade, he had a really hard time. And it didn't matter what I said or what I did. I just couldn't seem to reach him. So I brought him to a therapist. I remember sharing with my aunt, and she was like, oh God, that's awful. And I thought, that is so funny that she thinks this is awful. Like, I'm not able to help my kid, but there's an expert who might be. And that's what I love about working with young people, is that they get it. 4 sessions, he was like, I think I'm good to go. I have some tools. So he then is in soccer at the beginning of his freshman year, and he meets this, you know, this new friend, and this friend confides in him, whispers to him, Danny, I have to go and see a therapist. I have anxiety. And Danny goes, oh my gosh, it's going to change your life. He comes home and tells me this. And I was like so full of joy. He goes, it's going to be the best thing ever. I did this when I was in like 5th or 6th grade, and she was amazing. And then he sharing this with me, and it completely put his friend at ease, because he felt less alone. I'm not the only one, because we always think we're the only one. I'm the only one that's experiencing this, you know. And by sharing it with Danny, he felt safe enough to do that. Danny was able to say to him, yeah, I've been through that. I understand. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it. She's going to give you tools that are going to help you overcome this obstacle, this challenge. And he says to me, you know, the lady who helped Danny, her name is Lauren. Miss Lauren really helped me so much. You know, she's a really special lady, Mom. So then I had to text her and say, just so you know, Danny doesn't forget what you did for him back then. Thank you. So one of the comments earlier was showing appreciation and being in gratitude. And I think that is just such a powerful, underused activity, is to show appreciation and to be grateful for what you have right now. Stop futurescaping and thinking, when I get there, I'm going to feel this, or when I have this much money, I'm going to feel that, when I have this much followers, or whatever the case may be. And start noticing what you have right now. You're living your life in abundance by doing that.
Well, and look at the people who are right in front of you, who are right around you. Like I say, people are going off into strange lands they've never explored when they're sitting right on all the wealth and treasure they could ask for, if they start turning the lock that can open doors for themselves and people. And to your point, I couldn't wait to get my kids into counseling, you know, because just like your story, it showed, and how you approach it is how they approach it, right? This is going to be great, and we're all going to be going through it again, right? You're going to have your sessions, blah, blah, blah. Within 5-6 weeks, I learned that people will tell a stranger things they won't tell you, or a professional. Great. Right? And then you can hear it without them having to challenge themselves. And you know, that's what I'm hoping this show in a way is, there's people you can talk to who want to hear what you have to say. When people say, I'm afraid to reach out, it's because they think they're imposing, or someone probably will say no. And they've got so much rejection that another no is just going to be hard to take. But if there's also a need on givers to find worthy getters, right? So when you think, you know, I'm imposing, you're actually giving them the opportunity to do something with themselves or their resources that they don't, what they do for you means very little to them anymore, right? $100 to a person has nothing is $1 million. A person has $1 million, $100 is a tip. You know, and I think, you know, when people realize that it's the healthy people who seek help first, for 2 reasons. First of all, they need it, or they know they can use it, so they're not in denial. And the second thing is they trust there's someone who can help them, right? There's something to hope. There's something to, you know, how many times does just a compliment switch your whole attitude, or an insult if you wanted to use it? Here's Sheila, who says, sports are a lot of fun, different strokes, it's a disease that may be difficult. If you don't have it, not a material thing.
I don't really. I didn't really understand that.
Good people to track to. Well, I guess when you're dealing with a lot of metaphors, it's hard to get okay. And I hope that in a show like this, if one or two takeaways, either knowledge, inspiration, leads you to activation.
Yeah.
It's the doing that's where it begins. It's not the thinking. The thinking gets you into yourself, negotiating with yourself. I was talking about cars. So I think, Jenny, this was a wonderful episode. It was really unscripted. Everything went seamlessly. It was wonderfully supported by the audience with their comments, which gave us direction. And, it's so much easier just to go with the flow and let the universe take you where you're meant to be, instead of trying to fight or challenge. It wears you out, if nothing else. Any final thoughts, Jenny? You told some really cool stories.
Oh, thanks. But I get what Sheila's talking about now. She's saying it when we were playing around with, if we came into a lot of money, she's saying she'd buy a sports car because it would be a lot of fun, and there's a lot of fun people at the track. Now I understand. I'm a Formula One fan, Sheila, so I get it with the sports cars and the feel good factor of watching that race. So now I understand. But thank you for having me on today, Don. It's always a joy. I love chatting with you, and I'm so appreciative of your audience asking questions and sharing their insight. It's phenomenal. Thank you.
Well, thank you, because now everything we've talked about is becoming more relevant in everything that other people want to talk to us about it, right? So the whole shift is go to where the most need is that we can satisfy, and have them be able to spread the message to other people the same way. And you can use a platform like LinkedIn Live. There's 875 million people. The average connection has 991 connections, right? So if 100 people just share with their network, you can see what 100 times 1,000, that's a pretty good, and that's just first and second level. So anyways, share, help, support, make a story for the next day, which is tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to have Kelly back, who's a regular, and Friday is Andrea, and Saturday I can go on and on. It's booking up because people don't just want visibility. They want an audience that is aligned from the get-go, right? Talking to people who really want to hear what they have to say and can benefit the most for what everybody has to say. So anyways, wishing everybody the best of the rest of your day, wherever you're at. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow and every morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Bye for now.
Bye.